Today on the Bang Tail Says podcast, we're going to be discussing how Twitter's plans for the future differ from YouTube, Soyuz microphones, me not being successful, and then I am going to be judging your audio, so go ahead and stick around. And we are starting the show, and to answer the age-old question, I did bring back the cards for this episode, or at least a portion of this episode, and I even went to the trouble and expense of having the cards printed on the rear with my podcast logo and name. I am now officially a professional talk show host. Card 1 is done. Topic numero uno, what I have been testing. You, good sir or madame, have been listening to it. It is the Rode NTUSB Plus. This microphone is a USB condenser mic, cardioid only, and it costs $170. Full disclosure, was sent to me by Rode free of charge for the sake of making a review. They get zero editorial oversight about what I say about it. Great arrangement. Something that I noticed. I have my gain set at 0 on my Mac. The level that I am hitting is between -18 and -9 dB. Just something to note. The lowest I can go, I am a loud talker, but the lowest I can go is around -18 to -9 dB. If I go any higher, I tend to clip at around -6. I haven't measured exactly where I'm clipping, but I do clip around -6. Now, what is this microphone? Why is it a plus? It has DSP processing. It doesn't have extremely in-depth DSP processing. It has very basic DSP processing. It has a high-pass filter, which is 75 or 150 hertz, and then it has 4 other effects that are just on or off. You don't have the ability to adjust the settings, but you have the aural exciter, or as I like to call it, the oral exciter. I think we can all get behind the oral excitation. It has the big bottom. Again, I think you get the point. Jokes all around. It has a noise gate and a compressor. For this recording, I have all of the processing shut off because hearing the raw signal, at least for me when I am editing, is extremely important in assessing the microphone without all the other nonsense going on. Okay, that is card 2. Card 2 is done, and I will never find that card again, even though it just went right there. My eyes are so bad, I will never see it. That's it. Let's talk about what you had to say. And the first comment comes from Jacob, and he says, so how is how we described the future Twitter any different than YouTube? Jacob, thank you very much for the comment. My question to you would be, how is YouTube the same as this future Twitter? Let's walk through the feature sets that are similar. YouTube currently pays content creators. You upload videos to YouTube. YouTube runs ads on them. YouTube allows viewers to contribute to channels via super chats, super thanks, or memberships. At the end of every month, or around the 25th or so, YouTube takes the balance, if it exceeds a threshold, and deposits it into your bank account. Yes, they do have your social or your EIN because they are paying you, and they report your earnings to the IRS. So in that sense, yes, Twitter and YouTube will be the same. Because Elon was saying, we want to pay content creators. So Twitter would be allowing you to upload videos or post your content. They would run ads against it. They would probably have a paid premium version where you could give a membership to a tweeter, and then at the end of the month, you would get that money. In that regard, it is the same. Secondly, YouTube bans people who violate the terms of service, and they also have very questionable moderation. And if you want to resolve the issues, you have to go to Twitter to resolve it. If your channel gets incorrectly banned or locked which I experienced, you can't resolve it on YouTube because their system is garbage. You have to go to Twitter to resolve it. And that is the exact same story with Twitter. If you if you violate their terms of service, they will ban you, and they also seem to have questionable moderation. People who ought not have been banned are banned. People who should be banned are not banned. This goes all over on every single platform. This seems to be the modus operandi of any kind of moderation. It is handled poorly for a lot of people. But to me, that is where the similarities between the future Twitter that Elon was proposing and the current YouTube end. Because let's look at the other features that Twitter has that YouTube does not. Number one, this is currently in place. Twitter has direct messages. Those are private messages between users. Those messages are not currently end-to-end encrypted, meaning Twitter has access to every single direct private message that you have sent. Politicians, individuals, sex workers, whoever it may be. Twitter has access to those DMs, the private messages. Now, the question that I have for anybody who would be using Twitter as Elon is proposing, would you like your financial institution to have access to all of your private messages? I would hate if my bank had access to my Twitter DMs, to my text messages, to my emails. That would be horrifying to me. So that is the first feature that Twitter has that YouTube does not, because YouTube has zero way to DM between people. It has zero way to have private messages. Secondly, Elon was talking about Twitter having a money market account. What is a money market account? It is a savings account. So on YouTube, your money accrues over the month. At the end of the month, they send it to you. So at most, if you get banned from YouTube, you may lose 1 month of income. But in this future Twitter, with a money market, you're going to be earning 1%, 2%, 3%, depending. I won't go into the conspiracy corner. You'll be earning interest on it. And he said it would be great. Why not put more money into Twitter? Because you're earning a good interest rate. So now you are storing money on Twitter. What was one of the first things I said here? Twitter, YouTube, any social media platform has questionable moderation practices. Would you want a company such as Twitter, such as any social media platform, to be in control of access to your savings? I would never put money into a YouTube savings account, into a Facebook savings account, into a TikTok or Instagram savings account. No chance in heck. Because any of those platforms, you could just get mass reported, and if you have a savings account there, now you have lost access to it. Maybe you don't lose access to it, but it may become much more difficult to access. You may have to jump through hoops. You may need to take a photo of your ID and send it to them saying, hey, I am this person. Please send me a cashier's check of my balance. No, I will never put money in any platform that has moderation practices like this. If banks had a social media platform tied to them, I would take my money out of them immediately. And I know there are people out there saying, you still keep money in banks? You're crazy. That is a big difference between YouTube and the future Twitter. Twitter wants you to store money on them. YouTube says, take the money out. We're putting it in your bank account off platform every single month, assuming you surpass the threshold, which I believe is $100. And the final thing that I believe makes Twitter very different from YouTube is Elon was talking about Twitter having debit cards and checks. What would that give Twitter? A complete log of all of your transactions, who you're buying from, and how much you're spending. If we want to look at this in the least nefarious way, Would you want any advertiser to have a list of every single purchase you've made, not itemized, of course, but who you bought from and how much you spent? Oh, you went to Sephora and spent $5,000. Let's go ahead and sell this information to Sephora so they can manipulate you by spending $150 so every single advertisement is for Sephora. Do you want any advertiser to have that level of granularity into your transaction history? I wouldn't. I wouldn't want that. And that is the least nefarious. I know I am paranoid. I am a crazy person. And I take things to the extreme and think, what is the worst case scenario? A social media app rolling out financial instruments I put 2 and 2 together seems like the start of a social credit score, especially when they talk about storing money there. Offering money markets. Oh, we're going to have interest rates. Oh, we want transaction history from everything that you spend. Doesn't seem like a good idea. So as far as how the Twitter that Elon was proposing differs from YouTube, it is massively different because YouTube is just a vessel for transactions in terms of money. It does a lot more than that, but as far as the money is concerned, that's all it is. It's an intermediary. Advertisers want to put ads on videos. YouTube facilitates that. They share the revenue with content creators. Viewers of a channel want to support a channel. YouTube facilitates that by allowing them to become a member or contribute a super thanks or super chat. Twitter in the future does want to do all of those things, but they also want you to store your money with them. They also want transaction history of everything that you buy. That's a very big difference. And I don't like this cult of personality around Elon Musk thinking, oh, he can do no wrong. Of course he can. He can do a lot wrong. He is very entertaining, though. I will give everybody that. Just don't buy into the cult. Question everything, and as X-Files taught us and as was burned into my brain, trust no one. I may like what Elon does a lot of the times, but I'm not going to trust him. He's some billionaire who just buys company. No, I'm not going to trust. Why would you trust him? He doesn't have your best interest at heart. I hope he does good things. If he does, I'll praise him. If he doesn't, I won't. That's my response to you. What was your name? Jacob. Thank you very much. Hopefully that answers the question. Next, we have 2 comments regarding a what you had to say or an Ask Bandrew from last week regarding wanting 6 XLR inputs for a podcast and having a USB audio interface. So I got 2 pieces of information from the community. The community. First, we have a comment from Stefan, and he says, why use the 222? The H6 can act as an audio interface, except you want to record and use it as an audio interface at the same time? The EX-H6 would add 2 more XLRs for dynamic microphones, and if you want to multi-track recording, the 222 is out of the game anyhow. And the second comment comes from Cartoon Cocktail, and they say, another option to consider on the H6 if you need 6 inputs is to buy the EH6 Dual XLR TRX input capsule. I'm not certain about the second part of the requirement concerning the ability to connect to a second computer. Thank you very much, Stefan and Cartoon Cocktail. I appreciate it. This is a great recommendation to the gentleman from last week who wanted 6 XLR inputs and the ability to connect a second computer to the device. I think this may be the best route to go because he currently had the H6, if I remember correctly, and he already had the ability to connect the computer to the H6 in the method that he wanted. I don't think he mentioned that he wanted to connect to multiple computers while recording 6 microphones. He said he wanted to record 6 microphones when his friends come over and he does a roundtable podcast. If he does want to connect 2 microphones and record 6 XLR inputs, that might be an issue. I did also get a comment saying on the PodTrack P8. If you use the TRRS input, you lose one of the XLR inputs, so you would only be able to record 5 XLR inputs and the TRRS input. So it's the same issue here. If the H6 only has 6 inputs and you want to capture 6 mics and a secondary computer, it's not going to have enough tracks, and it seems like the PodTrack P8 might also run into that issue. But like I said last week, I have not used the P8 or the L8. You will need to do a bit more research on your own. But thank you very much for that input. Great recommendation, and that would probably save him quite a bit of money if the H6 with that capsule meets his needs. Thank you very much. Next, we have a comment from TJ Hallam, and I am going to pare this down because it is a long comment. He says, given how beautiful the Soyuz mics are, I went to their website to learn more. There I found the Our Story page, which says, the Soyuz factory known as the base wouldn't look out of place if it were transported back to the 1960s. It's very much like what you would have found in one of the premier microphone production facilities of that period. Manual lathes and drill presses, white lab coats, and analog testing machines. Everything from the way we machine our backplates and tune our capsules to how we wind our transformers is done much the same way as it was 60 years ago by companies like Neumann, hello Neumann, and AKG. The manufacturing techniques used in that era created a sonic character that is impossible to achieve using modern computer-controlled techniques. So, is this distinction between the quote-unquote human touch and modern CNC milled mics a real thing, or is Soyuz just conveniently giving us a nostalgic and embellished lens through which to view an outdated production facility? I guess what I'm asking is, does Soyuz's beauty go more than skin deep? Also, you made an offhand comment about Soyuz mics being made, or perhaps out of, old military equipment. This sounds like a potentially cool side note. Would love to know more details. TJ, thank you very much for the comment. I really do appreciate it. Those are some great questions. I think that's a ding, 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 ding. Those are some great questions. As far as the quote-unquote human touch versus the computer-controlled machining of modern mics and the discrepancy therein to sound like a douche, I don't know. The reason I'm saying that, I don't have access to handmade microphones from the 1960s from the likes of Neumann and AKG. I don't have the budget to have access to those microphones. I would love to. I would love to get my hands on an original Neumann U67 or a late stage U47. I would love nothing more. Well, there's a lot that I would love more than that, but that would be really exciting to try those out. But I think we could make an argument here. I think that the imperfections in audio equipment is what makes a lot of audio equipment interesting. If we look at preamps, for example, back in the 60s, the engineers were attempting to make the most pristine preamps possible, clean amplification. But the pre's that we end up loving are the preamps that have coloration, that distort, which is not what they wanted. That is a fault in their design. They were searching for pristine, clean, non-distorting gain, amplification for microphones. They failed at that. But we love that because of that imperfection, because it adds a flavor to the audio. So because of that, I think we can argue that the imperfections in audio equipment is what makes specific audio equipment interesting, and we could then argue that hand-building microphones is likely to produce more imperfections. So I think that is what they could be getting at. You are going to be getting that more unique sound by buying a handmade microphone. When you look at Rode mics like the NT1 or the LCT 440, or is it the 540, the Lewitt 640? I don't know which Lewitt mic, but any two of them are a matched set, they're able to do that because they are controlled via computer. The components are selected very specifically, and they meet a criteria. They have such a high threshold that any two of their microphones are a matched set. With vintage microphones, you could never do that because from mic to mic, they were very different sounding. At least from my understanding, U67 to U67 would be very different sounding, especially because the microphones were much more fragile, and back then, people would abuse them. They would smoke right next to the microphone, and that buildup of tar on the diaphragm of the mic is going to impact the sound. So I think, yes, it is just marketing by saying it's the human touch, but to me, that's pretty cool. That none of the microphones are going to be the same. If you're looking for scientific accuracy, of course, you're not going to be reaching for one of these or a set of these because they are going to differ. But as far as being a hipster douchebag, there's something appealing. There's something appealing about that. Oh yeah, everybody loves the SM7B, and everybody who buys an SM7B is going to sound the same. If the Soyuz mics became the next SM7B, yes, everybody might love the SU-023 bomblet, but none of them are going to sound identical, and that's kind of cool. And I think that is what they're getting at. So it really depends on what you're looking for in your microphone. Are you looking for exactly the same performance from mic to mic? Or are you looking for something that is a little bit unique? It's going to have imperfections. It's going to have flaws. Do you want your mic to be like a human, or do you want it to be like a robot? That may be unfair because robots are pretty cool too, right? Right? People like, I don't know. What am I talking about? And then as far as the old military equipment, I will include a photograph here. This is from the 1973 that I just got. This is a card in there. Their manual lathes were bought or acquired from the old Kalashnikov factories. Are those the people who made the AK-47? So they are using manual lathes that were used to make weapons for the military or for the black market, wherever the AK-47s went. Assuming that I am correct that the Kalashnikov was the AK-47 factory. Then yes, they are using machinery that used to make military weapons. That's pretty cool. On that note, I got a comment saying, I will never buy a microphone from a Russian company because of the government and the war. And my response was, because I looked into this, because I thought, hey, that's interesting. And I don't shove my ideals or politics or stances down people's throat on my main channel. I'm sure if you've been listening to this show for a while, you remember the whole issue, the struggle that I went through with the entire Chinese manufacturing and my ethical concerns with that. This was kind of the same thing, so I looked into it. Soyuz actually hired people away from weapons manufacturers. So they took away high-quality, skilled lathe operators or engineers, whatever, machinists from companies that were making weapons to contribute to the war. They hired them away to make microphones. So not only did they remove an employee from making things that kill people, but they pay them a higher wage too. They also took the machines from those. I don't want to say they took them, but they acquired them from weapons manufacturers. So if your issue is with Russia and the war, shouldn't you be thrilled with Soyuz or Soyuz because they are pulling people and machines away from the war machine? To sound redundant, they're pulling machines away from the war machine. You get what I'm trying to say. So that was an interesting comment that I got, and it kind of goes into this, into your question. Thank you very much, TJ. Is that it for that card? That card is done. We have one more card, and we have one last What You Had to Say from Andrew, and he says, you know what makes a review take less than 5 days to put together? A team. I feel like you have so many ideas in your head that you can't grow because of time, just like myself. I'll refrain from writing a small essay, but I think you need a small team of people to focus on these projects. Andrew, thank you very much for the comment. You are probably 199% right. That makes no sense because I said probably and then 199% right. If I had a team sitting behind me, correcting me and writing my outlines, I would not have made that mistake, yet here we are. Mistakes, warts and all, whatever you want to say about whatever you want to say. What am I talking about? This goes to show having a team would be fantastic. You are right, though. Due to time constraints, I have not executed on a lot of video ideas that I have had, a lot of series ideas that I have had. I have written down lots of outlines, lots of plans for series, and I never executed on them because that lack of time and, at the time, a lack of financing. I do not take sponsorships. I do not do business well because I don't think of myself as a business. I don't want to think of myself as a business. I will discuss that later. Because of that, I don't have the finances to hire a team. There was a short stint when things were just bonkers where I could have hired one person maybe, but given how the economy has turned into a bit of a recession, maybe it's not officially in a recession anymore, but I can see, sales have dropped off a cliff. Revenue down probably well over 50% now year over year, if not 80% from 2 years. It's crazy. So I would have had to lay off that person real quick. So because of that, I haven't executed on these ideas. I have seen other channels come in and do the exact thing that I was planning on doing. Initially, it stings, and I think, oh gosh darn it, heckin' butthead, I wanted to do that. And then I realized, well, I didn't do it. It's not like they copied my notes. It's parallel thinking. People have similar ideas, and other people actually do it full time, unlike me, so they can commit that time and they can commit those finances. But going back to the hiring a team thing, I do think that would be beneficial and it would be great to offload some of that work. But I am really not a manager type. I have said this so many times. I view YouTube as a hobby because of the volatility of income from YouTube, from all of the income streams, whether it be affiliate marketing, whether it be sponsorships, which I don't do or I have rarely done, or whether it be from advertisements, memberships, Patreon, any of that. It is extremely volatile. So if I took on the responsibility of bringing on a team member and having that obligation to pay them regularly, that would take this hobby that is a lot of fun for me and just turn it into a stress factory. My day job is already incredibly stressful. Every day, at the end of the day, I'm ready to rip my hair out because I'm so darn stressed. And then I do this hobby because it's fun for me. Yes, this hobby can be stressful. Yes, this hobby can have its issues. But overall, it is still a very fun hobby. And if I added that obligation and the stress that comes with putting somebody on the payroll, it would lose any joy that's remaining in it, and it would just become another job, and I don't want that. I don't want to have my day job that's stressful, and then the thing that's supposed to be an escape for me become another stressful job on top of that. No, I'm not going to do it. So although, yes, I would benefit from bringing on a team and expanding, maybe if I hired people freelance, hey, here's $500 for this one job, do it. Although $500 is hard to come by nowadays. So yes, you're right, but I don't know. Maybe in the future, if things turn around, but as things are going now, probably not. Thank you very much, and now let's jump to my favorite part of the show, the Ask Bandrew segment, where I judge your audio. Welcome to the Ask Bandrew segment. If you want to send something in, go to askbandrew.com. Send in audio and video sub 1 minute, or if you send in a text email, limit it. Do not think you can get around the time limit by writing a 10-paragraph email, please. And thank you. askbandrew.com. First voice submission comes from Ted. Take it away, Ted.
Hey, Bandrew, I'm Ted. Thank you for having me on this Ask Bandrew segment. First of all, I feel like I owe you a huge debt of gratitude for all the information that you've helped with as I watched both the Bandrew Says podcast and Podcastage. Having said that, I'd love to get your feedback on the way my setup looks and sounds. Obviously, I've got the Earthworks Ethos here as my mic. I'll transition over here to the interface of my Go XLR Mini so you can see the way I've got things set up. I have gain set at 47 dB. Going over here into the microphone settings, these are the settings for the noise gate that I'm using. Here are my equalizer settings. And over on the far right are the settings that I'm currently using for my compressor. Does this look like a pretty reasonable setup to you given the way that it sounds? And certainly open to any feedback on how I can make things sound better. Thank you for all you do, Bandrew.
Thank you very much for the voice submission, Ted. I really do appreciate it. You are running the Earthworks Ethos into the Go XLR. How does my audio sound? First thing I will say, based on the video, it looks as though you are speaking more into the side of the Ethos. That could be a little bit of a camera playing a trick. I don't know, but I would speak more directly into it. It looked like you were almost speaking completely past it, so the microphone was 90 degrees to your mouth as opposed to 45 degrees. So that's the first thing I would address. Then, as far as the gate, I think the gate is fine. It sounds like a gate. It's very hard to get around the issue of opens up, any noise that was there comes back in. That's going to happen with any kind of expansion, any kind of gate. So what I would recommend is maybe playing with the attenuation percentage a little bit. Currently it's at 50%. It wasn't the most noticeable thing when listening at reasonable levels. If I crank it up, I can hear that artifact a bit more. I would play around with that a bit, maybe 30%, 20%, somewhere in there. Just play around with that, see what works best for you. And then the EQ. I don't like your EQ. The main thing I dislike about it is the boost that you're doing around 90 hertz. Before watching the video, I dropped your audio into Logic. I looked at it in an EQ. I listened to it, and then I said, okay, what do I want? I found it too muddy, too muffled. So I pulled out something at around 120 hertz, I think it was, 115, around there. And then I looked at your EQ. You were doing +2. I don't remember if that correlates to decibel boost, but you had +2 at 90 hertz. I would pull that out. Maybe go from +2 to -1. And then the rest is pretty good. I actually did come up with an EQ curve. I did not write down what I did, so let me open up the screenshot that I made for this. And what I did was -2.4 dB at 110 hertz. Actually, first, 60 hertz high pass filter, 12 dB per octave. Then -2.4 dB at 110 hertz. And secondly, a -1.6 dB cut at 500 hertz with a Q of 1.6. That is what I did, and you will see that up on screen. And that just cleaned it up for me. I liked it a lot more with those EQ settings. So adjust accordingly if you want to. Thank you very much, Ted. Next, we have a audio submission from Fatty McFatface. I swear I am not being mean by calling him that. That is his username. Take it away, Fatty McFatface.
Hello again, fellow Earthlings, and hello, Bandrew. Bandrew, I only have 2 questions for you this time. What are the differences between a regular condenser microphone and a broadcast condenser microphone? Also, I got an Elgato Wave 1. Is it listenable with the current EQ that I have on it?
Fatty McFatface, thank you very much for the comment. Fatty McFatface, I really do appreciate it. Mr. Fatty McFatface. I am not using this as an excuse to just say Fatty McFatface. Ah, big ol' fatty fat. Anyway, jeez. I am very childish. Anyway, to your question, because there's nothing I can do to dig myself out of the hole that I just dug myself into, what are the differences between a normal condenser and a broadcast condenser microphone? That is the $1 million question, the $1 billion question. It's the question that's asked about dynamics as well. What makes a dynamic a broadcast dynamic over a regular dynamic, a handheld dynamic, a studio dynamic? Who knows? Marketing? The look of it? I think it's important to think about how a broadcast microphone is used differently than a studio microphone. In a studio with a condenser microphone like a U87, because that is what people think of when you think of studio condenser, you're going to use that 6 inches, 12 inches away. You're trying to capture the most realistic version of the audio. You're trying to make it punch through a mix, a dense music mix. So that is going to require you to have certain characteristics. You're going to want a little bit of a bump in the presence to cut through a dense mix, a lot of guitars, a lot of instruments going on. If you're using it 12 inches away, you don't need extremely dense foam because you're going to have a thin pop filter 4 inches away from your mouth or 6 inches away, then 6 inches from the microphone. So you don't have to worry about those aspects as much. But when we think about broadcasting, radios, podcasting, you're going to be close miking. I thought there was a microphone on that stand. That's not going to help. You're going to be close miking 3 inches away. So you're going to have to do two things. Account for plosives and wind noise. So you would have additional wind protection on it. Look at the Earthworks Ethos. It has a massive bit of foam on the end of it to help with plosives. Secondly, control the bass a bit, because as you get closer to a directional microphone, that proximity effect is going to be exaggerated, boosting the bass. Boosting the bass. I don't know why I still think that's funny. Boosting the bass. But you will need to control that a bit more, so the frequency response will likely be a bit more attenuated in the lower frequencies to account for the close miking of the mic. And you may also have slightly different top ends to broadcast condensers because they're not going to be competing with as dense of mixes. Maybe not. I guess it depends on what kind of broadcast application you're thinking of. If it's going to be a podcast, chances are you're not going to have extremely dense music underneath you. It's going to be mainly spoken word such as this. If you're doing some kind of radio or music show, first off, don't. You're going to copyright. You're going down a dangerous path. But if you're doing a music show, then maybe you'll be competing with really dense music. But it's probably not going to be too dominant. With a radio, I guess they just pull down the faders on the music when they're talking. And it doesn't really have to fit within the mix. So you don't have to worry about that as much. So that would be what I classify as a broadcast condenser. It's going to have a bit more protection for plosives. The low end is going to be suited for close miking a bit more. And the top end is not going to have to be as exaggerated because it's not necessarily going to be competing with as dense of a mix as a studio condenser might. Although then that raises the question, but then why do you have the RE320 and the RE27ND, which are both extremely bright dynamics? If anybody, I know there are some people who listen to this that do radio. Do you need extremely bright microphones to compete with dense mixes? Because I'm talking out of my rear end here. I'm just assuming how this works. Let me know. How do you decide on what microphone to use for radio broadcasting? Do you need that presence boost to overpower and cut through the music bed that is going on all the time, or do you just pull the fader down? I don't know. All right. And then the second question you have. This is just the episode where I have to listen to your stuff and tell you you're the worst. You're using the... You're not the worst. You're using the Wave 1 is the audio listenable. I think this is a fine sounding microphone. I would not have any complaints if I came across a video or a podcast with this audio. There are a few things that I would do. First, I would do a cut around 150 hertz. If you are listening to this only and you want to know more, look at the video, bandrewsays.com. You can find the video. And there is the EQ that I did on screen. 150 hertz cut. And then I heard something that was a bit harsh and I hunted around for it. I was thinking around 1200, then 1400, and then I landed around 2000 hertz. And I cut around 1.5 or 2 dB there. So that is what I would do. It's very listenable. It's tolerable. I would have zero complaints about it, better than a lot of stuff that I have heard, but that is what I would do to fix that. Next, we have a written submission from Paul. He says, using your review and information, I purchased a Samson G-Track Pro, and I love its performance and features. My question is, what is the reason or reasons you rarely feature a condenser mic for review? Thanks, and keep up the good work. Paul, MS. What does that MS mean? Master of Science, a fellow Master of Science. Nice to meet you, Master of Science Paul. My name is Master of Science Bandrew, and I use my education every single day. I have to disagree with your assessment that I rarely feature condenser microphones for review, but you did make me look. If that's what you were getting at, you did make me look. I took the last 24 videos that I have put out. That means 6 months of videos. And I broke down what they were. I did one random everyday carry video. That doesn't fall into any category. I did 4 educational topics. Why do I do this? Oh, this doesn't matter. You should avoid doing this, that kind of stuff. I did 5 interface videos, which is crazy to me because I don't think I've ever done 5 interface reviews in an entire year. I've done 5 in the last 6 months. Then I did 7 dynamic microphone videos, reviews, and versus series. And then we have condenser mics. I did 7 condenser mic videos. I think that's a pretty nice breakdown of video content. Of course, the educational stuff, not of course, but unfortunately, the educational stuff was all lumped towards the beginning of that 6 months. And I need to get back into doing a lot more of that. But that's a pretty good breakdown. Nice variation there. Education, interface, condenser, dynamic, and then one random everyday carry video because I was lazy and I like everyday carry videos, okay? Get off my case. It's my channel. I can do what I want. It's a hobby. It's a hobby. Leave me alone. So I think that's a pretty fair breakdown. There have been a lot of dynamics that have been coming out recently. So that's what gets covered. But in general, if we look at the big picture, pretty even breakdown, in my opinion. Of course, some of those are small. This is an of course. Some of those are small diaphragm condensers and not large diaphragm condensers, but still a condenser nonetheless. And hopefully that answered your question, Paul, Master of Science Paul. Much obliged. Appreciate you. Talk to ya there or on a see ya there or see ya another time. What? Final submission comes from Jim. Take it away, Jim.
Hello, Bandrew. I'd like to start by saying that I deeply appreciate what you do. It's a valuable service. I discovered you around the time I was starting a podcast, and though I don't need to know everything about all the mics and all the interfaces, I listen to your podcast because it fills me in on the social media industry changes that I have no desire to keep up with. It's a quick, easy, and entertaining way to do that, so thank you for that. I have a bunch of questions, but I'm only going to ask 2 because of time constraints. 1, how does this sound? I think it's pretty good, but during the editing process, I always lose track of reality, and then I can't tell if I'm taking too much out or leaving too much in. I'm using a Shure Beta 57, not the 57A, and I'm going into a Zoom H6. I record in a low-ceiling basement with rugs and blankets around me. It's very ugly, which is why I do an audio-only podcast. Question 2 is, will you be a guest on my podcast? If it's inappropriate to ask that here, I am sorry. It's called Feel Free to Deviate. We talk about careers and people's relationships with success. And based on what I've heard you talk about on your various channels, I think it would be a fun and interesting talk. Thank you for your time and consideration. I hope to hear back from you soon.
All right, Jim, thank you very much for the voice submission. How does this sound, you ask? Like I said, I am judging your audio today because every single person who submitted an audio submission said, how does this sound? Normally, I just say it's listenable. It's listenable. I wouldn't complain because people who listen to this show do a good job. But enough people asked, I'm getting nitpicky. I am getting anal retentive about this. You're bringing out the devil in me, making me actually nitpick your audio. Okay. I think it's perfectly listenable. However, I wanted to do a few things with this. With a lot of the Shure condenser stuff or the beta stuff, I find it a bit harsh. I find it a bit overboosted. And what I found myself doing, I didn't look at any EQ graphs or frequency responses. I just used my ears and thought, when he says podcast, there's something funky going on there. I want to find that and pull that out because that is harsh, grating. I don't like it. Also, in general, there was just this kind of upper middiness that I wasn't too keen on. So what I did was a minus 2 dB cut with a Q of 1.4, somewhere between 750 and 800 hertz. That kind of pulled out the weird resonance when you were saying podcast. And then I also found myself wanting to cut 2.5 dB around 2.5 kilohertz with a Q of 0.75. And that just tended to clean up a bit of the resonance and clean up a bit of the harshness on the mic. So that's what I would do with that microphone. Overall, still very listenable. And the room, I don't hear any of that. I would be more than happy to listen to a show with that. Then we get to the question, will you be a guest on my podcast? Bit inappropriate to ask this publicly, but I will address this. Here is the issue with this. Imposter syndrome. This is something that I struggle with all the time. It must have been 6 months or a year before I agreed to go on the Scottish Watches podcast. I love watches and I love podcasting. I didn't think I had any right to be on I still don't think I had any right to be on the show, but I went on. It took 6 months to 12 months to overcome that and just say, okay, I'll do it. Secondly, I don't really have a career in YouTube. So if your show is about people who do these creative things as careers and are successful, I don't have anything to offer there. And as far as my actual career, I don't think anybody would find me talking about putting numbers in Excel. I don't think anybody would find that interesting. And most of the stuff that I do, I can't even talk about. So I don't think that would offer any value. I also don't view myself as traditionally successful. I still work a day job. I still work a 9 to 5, or in my case, a 6 to 4. That's not something that anybody would say, oh, wow, look at that successful person working 80 hours a week because they still work a 9 to 5. Nobody views that as successful. I also just view making videos as a hobby. It's just something fun for me to do in the evenings. I do earn a little bit of money from it. It's not a crazy amount of money. And on that note, I don't capitalize on business opportunities. Or I don't capitalize on all business opportunities, the vast majority of business opportunities. I don't do paid videos. A lot of people who do YouTube full time, who do this as a business, do paid videos. They'll get paid by companies to cover products. I don't do that. A lot of people accept a lot of advertising. Every video they make is an advertisement or it includes an advertisement. I don't do that. I don't like doing it, so I'm not going to do it. I don't like videos with I understand people have the right to make money. I don't want to make money that way. I don't want to be just an advertising soundboard. And I already know what people are thinking. They send you microphones. You're doing it. You're advertising for them for free for the cost of the mic. Yes, I understand that. But it is not, hey, you should buy this microphone. It's, hey, here is how the microphone sounds. Here are the issues that I had with it. In an advertisement, you can't say that kind of crap. And with an advertisement, hey, go check out Raid of Clans. Let's go with that. I didn't want to give any of them any free advertising. Go check out and download Raid of Clans, where you can sign up and make your own website. I think you all know the advertisements that I have heard too much. I don't want to be that. I don't want to just be an advertising platform. I don't want to exist solely for the purpose of pushing products. The entire the entire purpose of my channel is to help people make more educated purchasing decisions. Advertisements do not allow people to make educated decisions. It is just manipulating people to buy something. I don't want to do that. So I don't do that. Consulting. I get emails from people a lot. Hey, do you do consulting? I don't. I don't do consulting. I have spoken to some people who are much more business savvy. I know they listen. They have said, hey, when you get asked by these people to do consulting and you have helped a few people out, you should bill them. I don't like doing that. I don't do the courses. I have had people advocating that I make courses. I don't like doing that. I don't want to put this stuff behind a paywall. Would it be smart business-wise? Absolutely. I could make so much more money doing that. I don't feel like doing it. I don't want this to be a business. I want this to remain an escape from reality. If I started to do all this stuff, developing all these new income streams that with it include massive amounts of work where I have to hire people and then develop pay stubs and pay their taxes and their it's already a nightmare. I'm already stressed out thinking about it. So as far as being successful, I don't view myself as being traditionally successful. I'm just a dude who has a hobby on the internet. Is the hobby stressful sometimes? Sure. But in the grand scheme of things, exploring audio, excuse me as I move this sound panel out of the way so I can see the bottom of my outline. In the grand scheme of things, exploring audio equipment is still very fun for me. It's still a good escape from reality. It's nice to just plug in a microphone and put it on a guitar cab and just play guitar for a little bit. So if that's success, I guess if that is an interesting topic, the definition of success. That is something that Heather from Sunshine and Power Cuts, hey, a podcast of the Geeks Rising Podcast Network, has discussed at length. The definition of success. If you define success as monetary income, monetary growth, running a business as a business ought to be run, then I am one of the least successful people out there because any of the opportunities that have presented themselves to me where I would increase my revenue, I just say, no, I don't want to. I don't feel like it. No thanks. I don't want to read an ad for you. Nope. I don't want to make a paid video for you. But if you define success as somebody with a hobby where in their spare bedroom they talk about audio equipment and that's the long and short of it, then sure, I guess I will. I don't like being guests on podcasts because I always feel like I put my foot in my mouth. I don't know if anybody else who has been a guest on a podcast feels that way, but whenever I am done, I just have this sense of dread thinking, what did I say? Did I say anything that's going to come back and bite me in the rear end? Always concerned about that. Last guest spot I did, I thought, oh my God, people are going to hate me after this one. Oh God. That's just the way it goes. Maybe people aren't so up their own rear end or so stuck in their head as I am. But there you go. If I can fit you into my 80-hour-a-week work schedule, then sure thing. All right, that is it for this week's episode. That went on a lot longer than I was expecting it to. I appreciate you all coming by. You are a beautiful, amazing human being. I love you so much as I pat you on the head. Pat, pat, pat. I appreciate you. I hope you have an amazing Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. Next Sunday, I will talk at you. Go check out, I haven't done this before, go check out noagendastream.com. This show gets rebroadcast there on occasion. No Agenda Stream. Then there are some other political shows. If you're not into politics, you're probably not going to like the shows on there. But okay, that is it. I will talk to you in a week or so, or in a week. I love you. Talk to you on a later date. Bye-bye. Whoa. Boop.
This has been a Geeks Rising production. Your executive producer is Bandrew Scott. For more information, head over to www.geeksrising.com.